Well, Bear, week 1 of the NFL season in the books. How'd you survive the week?
The Dolphins won. Not very pretty, but they won. And I thought the Packers, took care of business. But again, I thought we talked about it last week. Defense still got some questions, I think, especially run defense. Matt Forte pretty much ran at will against them.
He did. What was the most impressive performance of the weekend for you?
I think the Bills. Bills beating the Colts, who myself included were picked to go to the Super Bowl. Defensively they're very good. And
Tyrod Taylor
pretty
good at quarterback.
Played well, and obviously going in playing in the Bills on the road is going to be a tough task.
I'll take Marcus Mariota for 4 touchdowns in his first game.
I won't take Peyton Manning, who I do have in 2 fantasy teams.
Is that your biggest dud of the week?
He didn't even throw a touchdown pass. His arm was going to fall off.
There wasn't an offensive touchdown in that whole game?
No, they didn't get inside the red zone until about 4 minutes left. So when you're counting on Peyton to carry your fantasy team and he doesn't throw any touchdown passes, guess what? I'm 0-2.
The big news is I might only be doing the show for another week because I got a couple tickets into the Millionaire game next week for DraftKings. So
don't forget your
If you don't see me here next week, that's why.
That's why. I'll be the editor then.
For now, we'll stick around. We'll talk some more football.
That's right.
This is Extra Points coming up right after this.
Ow, checking. 2-minute minor, slashing.
For slashing. Probably see a lot of that at the Janesville Ice Arena this weekend.
The Jets are back.
Yeah.
They've landed.
A quick mention to the Jets. They've got Kenai River coming to town. It feels like the season just ended, it seems like. But here we are, ready to start the 2015-16 season.
Basically 2 wins away from playing for the Robertson Cup last year.
Set a bunch of regular season records, which means they put a lot of guys on to the next level. And we'll have to see who all is back. It can't be a lot of guys.
The Freak is not back.
No.
The Freak is
not
back.
He's
playing for the Badgers. That'll be interesting to see how he does there.
More on the Jets as the season rolls along. Obviously, it's a long campaign, but we wanted to give them a little shout-out since the season starts on Friday. This is Extra Points. This is John Barry. He's a sports reporter here at the Gazette. I'm sports editor Eric Schmoldt. This is our weekly show where we talk about local sports, and around this time of year, it revolves a lot around football.
It does.
And coming up this week, you've got your midseason awards for high school. It's once we get to halftime of these Week 5 games, we've reached the halftime of the season.
Halfway point. That's correct.
Why don't you give don't give it all away? I don't want you to give all your secrets away, but maybe give just a little taste of what your awards. At the
you will hear the
like.
name Jake Benzing a couple of times.
Okay.
DJ Vance, you'll hear a couple of times. Nate Loomis is a name that comes up a couple of times. So it's more or less, what teams and players have done the first half. It's not going to be based on anything that I expect to happen, although I do give a couple of hints at what I think is going to transpire the rest of the year. But just an opportunity to shout out, heap and praise, I guess, a little bit to some individuals that, I don't think should go unnoticed.
I got to see Benzing last week for the first time, Delavan losing to Union Grove. I think when he gets a chance to have even a couple of seconds to figure out what he can do in the backfield, he probably can do a lot of great things. Now they're getting into the stout part of their schedule where they're facing some of the bigger enrollment teams. Usually means you're at a disadvantage in the trenches in terms of size, and we saw that against Union Grove. They're going to face an uphill battle against Badger in that sense this week. And, Jake didn't have a lot of time to do much, whether it was running or passing. And either for Fabius Shipman, the running back, he was hit in the backfield a lot. And I think if Delavan Darien wants to be a playoff team, they've certainly got the athletes to do it, but you're going to need to try to find a way to get them some time.
Well, and I think you saw that same thing with Micah Rudd. He ran wild that first week for Edgerton, 420-some yards. Really been held in check the last 3 weeks, and that's mainly because offensive line is depleted for Edgerton, and it's tough to run behind sophomores and juniors and backups, and that's a lot of times where the game's won. And I think right now, like you had talked about, teams are finding out that especially outside of the Big Eight, that non-conference schedule sometimes isn't all it's cracked up to be. And once you get into the conference, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, well, I mean, you just look at the enrollments in the Southern Lakes, and Delavan Darien is about half the size of some of these schools, and that's going to translate a lot into the trenches, just in terms of strength and bigger guys.
And
It's
what
just
you
the
have
way
for
it is.
numbers, it's the same with Parkview. Parkview good enough to win a game and snap their three-year losing streak. But now, again, they're finding out that when a school of 200 is competing with a school of 600 or 700, especially in football, makes a huge difference. Huge difference.
Did you give out team awards, or was it
I
just,
did. I gave out team awards.
I would guess Evansville Albany, a team that we talked about in the preseason.
They're in the mix. I mean,
yep. You have to give some credit to the Blue Devils defense. I think they're giving up about 6.5 points per game. They have 2 shutouts on their slate already. You can't ask for much more.
No, and they're in the mix. And like I say, I mentioned some teams that were 3-1, and certainly Delavan and Badger in that mix. But they're playing each other this week. So again, I tried not to base it on what I think is going to happen the rest of the year. I'm just looking at it from the first 4 games, and Evansville Albany certainly is one of the teams in consideration. Let's put it that way.
Well, I will say something about them going. I fully anticipate that they're going to be 9-0. I don't see them losing a game right now. I mean, if you're only giving up a touchdown a game, they've shown they've got 3 running backs between Brennan Banks, Riker Brown, and Nate Redders. They can each go for 100 every game. They can catch the ball. I mean, I don't see them losing.
And I think the way to look at that is a sense that I think the Rock North is down.
True. I think
Edgerton's not as strong as they've been the last couple of years. Jefferson's way down. McFarland hasn't won a game yet. So those 3 teams that have kind of been their nemesis the last few years are down. And then if you look at the Rock South, I think Broadhead, certainly is going to be in the playoffs again. Bigfoot's going to be right there. But I'm not sure they're on the same level as Evansville Albany, although Evansville Albany lost or beat Broadhead by a couple, but Broadhead, Evansville was missing some kids.
I think that could be the most interesting matchup, whatever happens week 8, when Evansville Albany, presumed winner of the Rock North place, whichever team wins the Rock South. Looks like Broadhead Judah's to lose at this point.
Right.
If they have a rematch, that could be a really interesting game. Broadhead Judah took the driver's seat this week, getting a double overtime win at Bigfoot. I mean, pretty impressive, especially considering they were up most of the game, kind of choked it away at the end of regulation, but found a way to get it done.
Well, and keep your eye on the Cougars, Clinton.
Yep.
I talked to Jeff Spivak this morning, and
they got Jordan Jones back.
They've got kids back now, and he said our younger kids are starting to come around, and he said we were kind of a shell of the team the first couple of games, and it showed that. And he said, we're certainly not looking past Turner, but we like the position we're in, and we really like, he said, especially defensively, the way they played the last 2 weeks.
I think I might get over and see that game this week just to see. I mean, Turner's had some impressive performances in the first 4 weeks. Back down to earth maybe a little bit, but when they played Bigfoot. But I mean, I think
have weapons with Seth Smith and Loomis. They got 2 kids that I got a chance to really dig into Nate Loomis's stats, and his are crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, really, really good. Yeah.
How about in the Big 8? Middleton has certainly put itself in the driver's seat there. They're the only team that's undefeated. They've beaten the 2 teams that have 1 loss. They've got to win over Parker. But I think we've said it every week, but it's anybody's game every week, it seems like. You can see a Parker go on the road with its backup quarterback and beat Verona in overtime. Craig very easily could be 4-0, but they're 2-2. I mean, it's a kind of a crazy league.
It is, and I talked to Ben McCormick, the Craig coach, this morning, and we got talking about Middleton, and he doesn't think they'll lose the rest of the way. And I thought coming in the year that whoever won the Big 8, or for that matter, whoever won any conference in the area would have at least 1 loss. Ben thinks they'll run the table. I still think Madison Memorial, now that they've got everybody back, is going to be a pretty formidable opponent. The funny part is Middleton gets Sun Prairie this week. If they beat Sun Prairie, the Cardinals are sitting at 1-4, and that is unheard of in Big 8 football. So, a huge, huge win for Parker last week on Friday, coming back to beat Verona in overtime, because, let's face it, being 2-2 is a lot different than being 1-3. And a big win for them. Looks like quarterback Jordan Bailey, who sat out the second half with a leg injury, he practiced on Monday, so it looks like he will be probably a game-time decision, but it looks like he's probably going to go. And for the Cougars, just an unbelievably shocking loss. They got the ball on about the 2-inch line to go ahead by 2 scores. They go illegal procedure. They have a field goal blocked, and then East goes 90-some yards in a minute without a timeout. And you hope it's not a devastating loss, but a lot of times, those are tough to overcome. I mean, they get a good La Folla team this week. Craig loses. They're all of a sudden in a 3-game losing streak where they could have been 4-0, and you just hope that that's not the downslide for their season. But I think Ben he said he's liked the response he's got from his kids. He said they had a really good day of practice on Monday, and he said the message – he feels like the message to that team got through and that they'll come ready to play on Friday night.
It's kind of like Parker. They lost their first 2 games by 2 points apiece, and they've bounced back very well.
Yeah.
So Craig just needs to find a way to do the same thing.
They got to find a way, and like he said, we've got to find a way to stop the run.
East at Parker, general thoughts?
I would expect a shootout. Parker's been good defensively, but I can't believe there's many teams in the area with better skill kids than Madison East has. Teagham at wide receivers about 6'4", 6'5". Ben said, we told our kids they were going to run a slant in that last play of the game, and they still converted.
Couldn't do anything about it. Huh?
Couldn't do anything. And, Amadou Daff is leading the Big 8 in rushing, very fluid, kind of a shifty back. And then Parker certainly with Vance, if Bailey's able to go. They've opened up the playbook a little bit, and certainly Dick Shue's defense has been pretty solid. So I would expect a good game, and Parker, again, if you want to get back to playoffs, it's a game you got to have.
Both the Janesville teams playing against teams that are 3-1. All of a sudden, you win. You're third, tied for second, third in the league. Craig at La Follette. Same boat.
Same boat. And you look at La Follette statistically, not anybody stands out. But Ben said they're very physical. He said they are very, very fast on film. And he said, we can't stop the run. We're not going to win. He said, it hurt us last week. It's hurt us all year. And he said, we've got to get better play up front. We've got to get better play from our linebackers. But he said, I'm expecting that to happen because he said we won't be seeing such a wide-open offense this week. It's more smash mouth. And he said their kids tend to play a little bit better against those types of offenses.
Some of the other matchups around the area, Milton at Fort Atkinson, kind of a rivalry matchup there. Milton has got it done defensively, not any surprise coming from the O'Leary brothers, and they've done just enough on offense to the point where they've had some success, and I would expect that against the Fort Atkinson team that's down a little bit this year.
I would think that basically Milton's probably not going to blow anybody out of the water, but other than the Waunakee game, which, let's face it, Waunakee's the best teams in the state, Milton's not going to get blown out. I mean, I would expect close games from Milton from here on out. They've still got unbeaten Oregon on the schedule. They've still got unbeaten Stoughton on the schedule, and they've got once beaten Monona Grove with a Division I running back on the team that's certainly, even without their starting quarterback, is still going to be a pretty good opponent.
Elsewhere, talked about Delvin Darien and Badger. I think the Badgers have looked like they're back to the point where they're a favorite in the Lakes, and I think it's going to be tough for Delvin Darien to win that battle in the trenches again. And I think Badger has shown against very good competition, they can run the ball no matter who's on the other side of the line. And that's just it. I
mean, if they force Delavan into doing things they don't like to do, it could get ugly.
In the Rock Valley, I guess
not a lot of great games if you look at records, but certainly I think
Turner at Clinton's intriguing.
Turner at Clinton's intriguing in the fact that every coach you talk to said, hey, I don't care what they've done in the past. Turner's an improved team, and with Smith and Loomis, they're certainly capable of scoring. I just think Clinton, because, Jeff, like he said, now that they're back pretty much to full strength, he's got the team that he envisioned coming into the year.
As always, you can follow us on Friday nights. You can follow Tim Seaman on Twitter. He kind of keeps everybody posted on scores around the area throughout the night. And we get everything posted on Gazette Extra as fast as we can. Last week we covered 4 games.
Yep.
3 of them were decided by less than a touchdown. 2 of them went to at least 1 overtime. So that was pretty fun.
There might
Friday
be a
night.
Game from that mix that made my Game of the Year, too, award. So we'll see.
I'm intrigued. Both. I would think there would be 2 that could have made
There's
that.
There's a bunch of them.
Quick shout out to the Warhawks, who got Kevin Bullis' first win, and it was over about 5 minutes after it started.
And it may be over by the time Finlandia gets off the bus this week because they lost to Oshkosh 89-6 or something, and Whitewater is twice as good as Oshkosh. So, and I mentioned that to Kevin on the phone last week when I talked to him, and he said, look, it is what it is. He said, I can't show any disrespect to that program. That coach is trying to do what he can to build them up. It's I think their first year in Division III after making the push up from NAIA, and it's certainly a tough task. And Whitewater can name the score, but like Kevin talked about, it's a chance for everybody to play.
Right, you could see, and if you're around here and you got something, you got a Saturday open, you could go over, you could see a Harry Henschler or Tom Gebauer from Craig,
Exactly.
or Hunter Nelson from Milton, Weber Powell from Milton, guys that have
and even
joined
the
that
starters
squad.
they have Paul Foster,
Right.
Marcus McClin.
I don't know how long those guys are going to be playing in this one.
Doyle, kid from Parker. So I mean, yeah, and that's what he talked about is we're still in the evaluating stage, and by letting everybody play, we can evaluate, and that's going to happen this week. It's going to happen the week after, and then they finally get in WIC with Platteville, where they're probably going to be their first test.
Badgers, that was a.
Miami, Ohio was not good.
I think we said last week, I don't know what we could take away from the Alabama game because so many people got hurt, and it's kind of what we expected. And then they go up against Miami of Ohio, and the blowout was kind of expected too. So I don't know. I still don't know if we know how much we know.
I think the one thing we did learn is that McAvoy's got to be on the field. He's got to play at receiver, and I know he can't play the whole game on both sides of the ball, but boy, when he's on the field, things seem to happen. And we're maybe getting that second receiver with Wainwright or Wheelwright. Is it Wheelwright? Wheelwright. Yeah. And defensively with Caputo, they're a better team with him on the field. They get Troy Aikman this week, and I don't think they'll be much of a test, but it is what it is. It's that part of the schedule, and we thought that the Badgers would beef up, and they may run the table yet. I mean, they're going to be favored probably in every game they play from here on out until hopefully they get to the Big Ten title game.
Maybe at Nebraska. I don't know.
At Nebraska and Lincoln, I don't know how the Cornhuskers. I know they lost their opener, so it's hard to say. But we're back into the top 25, and
Troy coming in.
You watch the Badgers.
I don't know about the Aikman part.
They will gradually move their way up, and by the time November rolls along, the Badgers will be right outside the top 10, I would think.
Packers Seahawks this week. I think that everybody thought going into the year it would be a rematch, not only just a rematch of last year's NFC title game, but maybe a preview of this year's NFC title game. And I know, like you said in the preview, the opener here, the Packers defense didn't look so great against the run, and the Seahawks are the only team in the NFC West without a win through week one. So that's interesting, but I still think these are the two teams, even despite some of that.
I would agree. And two words can describe what I think of what a waste the preseason is. James Jones. I mean, the guy played absolutely nothing with the Packers last year in preseason.
He was getting cut by everybody in the preseason.
2 touchdowns and really was a difference maker. And it just shows you
we said he was going to be a difference maker at some point this season. I don't know if we said week one.
It just shows you that preseason doesn't mean anything. I mean, all those teams that look great in the preseason, the 49ers look putrid. They looked decent on Monday night against the Vikings, although that was a really bad game. It was painful to watch. And some other teams, the Eagles, they were supposed to be lights out. They lost their opener. They didn't look good until the second half. And it just stop.
I thought the Falcons looked pretty good.
Yeah, stop dwelling on the preseason in any sport. It means absolutely nothing. Nothing.
I do need to probably rescind my Peyton Manning AFC MVP pick.
Well, after 1 week, you certainly do, yes, because there were some throws he made that showed that he's about 100 years old.
I think he'll be fine, but I don't know if he's going to get to MVP status. Tom Brady might be that guy.
Mariota might get it.
Yeah,
if he has 4 touchdowns a game, that's a lot. That's 64 touchdowns in a year. That's pretty good.
You just encouraged everyone to not overreact to preseason, and now you just overreacted to 1 week.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I mean, it was a fun week to watch. My boy Des Bryant going down didn't help my fantasy much, but I think it's pretty apparent that the Packers already with a 1-game lead in the division, and we're 1 week into it.
4 of the 8 divisions have one team.
Your Lions looked good the first half. The second half, they didn't look so good. No, not so much. But it's a long year, and you're right. It's tough to put a lot of stock into one game and 1 week, and guys that may have looked great. I think back to Tuffy Rhodes hitting 3 home runs for the Cubs on opening day, and I don't even know if he played the rest of the year. So
what do you think about Packers Seahawks?
Well,
it's at Lambeau. I think that's a big advantage.
After what Forte did, you
got to expect Lynch
to run, but Green Bay's going to score points. I don't think there's any question. I'm surprised. I think Seattle misses. Is it Cameron?
Cam Chancellor.
Chancellor. I think they miss him. I don't think there's any question.
I think if I'm the Seahawks, I know they haven't really operated like this, but if I'm them, I think maybe we should sign this guy this week and
Yeah.
just bite the bullet.
And if
here.
they're only less than $1 million apart, I mean, what to
it's kind of the principle. He signed he's played 1 year on the contract. If you do that for him, now you set a precedent with other
but
people.
for an NFL team, what's $1 million? I mean, if I got to pay you $900,000,
I don't think it's the money. I think it's the precedent.
Well, okay, but the precedent may have already been set is the fact that they're not as good with him defensively.
And you don't want to be 0-2.
No, you don't want to be 0-2, especially when teams are going to be probably 2-0 in your division. And I would expect a close game. It's a Sunday night game. Lambeau will be rocking, and I would think I'll go 27-24 Seahawks.
Yeah, I said the Seahawks were going to win a week ago. I think the Packers might win.
I wouldn't be
I think they might win like 30-20.
I wouldn't.
I
be
might
shocked.
change that by Sunday. You can always see our picks on the Packer game day page. But
Right. Well, and I like I say, you got number 12 behind center. You're going to be in every game. He's pretty good.
That's probably about it for this week. Next week, we talked a little bit about midseason awards, but I'd like to hand out midterm grades for teams next week on the high school scene, since we'll be more than halfway through, and we'll try to determine a little bit of the playoff picture with 4 weeks left in the season, and kind of see where everything else
Quick
stands.
shout out to those looking for something to do on Saturday morning. Get out to Riverside Golf Course.
There's going to be a lot of good teams
Parker
out there.
girls golf team hosting an invitational, which is really a mini state meet with the teams that are there, and led locally by
Milton, probably.
top 2 or 3 ranked Milton team that was number 1 for 1 week. So
Verona will be there. Milton, Verona, kind of been
Verona,
going back
Middleton.
and forth.
I don't know if Arrowhead's there. I don't remember, but it's.
But Parker's been coming on too.
It's the best of the best, and it looks like it's going to be a good day. So if you're looking for something to do on Saturday morning, Badgers don't play till 2:30. Go down there, and Friday
and Saturday night, Jets. Check them out.
Jets as they look to put together another good season, which it's fun, cheap entertainment down at the Janesville Ice Arena.
Between now and then, you can let us know what you think of the show by commenting here, or email us at sports@gazetteextra.com. Find us on Twitter, harass us, whatever you need to do.
Whatever.
Thanks to Andrew Ryder, our producer, and we'll be back here next week for more local sports.
Take care, everybody. That was loud.
That was really loud. Probably cut that out.